Okay, it is 6:01. I will call the June 13th Lowell Light and Power Board meeting to order. Charlie, if you would do roll call.
Excuse me. Chairman Beecham.
Here.
Vice Chair Shroud.
Here.
Board Member Crawford. Here. Board Member Conger.
Here.
And Board Member Cadwalder is absent.
Tina has called in and said that she could not make it tonight. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn, or... It's a walking time? Excuse. Okay.
Excuse Perry.
I see where my mind is. Record. Would I have support?
Sorry.
Support for excusing Tina.
I'll motion to excuse
Support.
Ms. absent.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the agenda. We do have a change. We will be going into, do it after board comment. We will be going into closed session for a labor discussion of the IDEW, and then we will be coming out of that, and depending on how everything goes in the meeting, we'll probably be going to a vote.
And I have whenever there's a motion made, normally I try to put it on the agenda, but it'll be pursuant to MCL 15.268C. The motion is supposed to reference the specific state statute. So whenever we get to that point, I can share it again, but it is for the purposes of discussing a collective bargaining agreement, negotiations surrounding a collective bargaining agreement. But
Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So motion. I'll support
Okay.
the modified agenda.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the minutes. Minutes from the May 9th, 2023 regular board meeting. Any changes or anything that anybody saw?
Motion to approve the minutes. Supported.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Public comment. Any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to action items. The first one's pretty simple, fiscal year, just noting, agreeing on the dates of the meetings for the 23-24 year.
and they all follow the standard Tuesday following the second Monday.
And I can't seem to find like any holidays around those dates that really.
The only one that, and again, it can be changed at any time, the only one that I would look at is the April 9th, and the only thing that, I don't know when our school's spring break is, and if it was, if it fell, if spring break fell into that week, I personally would like to, I'm sure I'll be here, but would probably look at changing the date if the schools, and I haven't seen what the calendar is,
I'll look into that.
But with that, I would entertain a motion to approve those dates.
Motion to approve the proposed meeting dates. I'll support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. PA 95 annual election.
Yeah, so this is something that I know the board's familiar with, but this is our annual election of whether or not we opt in or opt out of the Low Income Energy Assistance Fund, which ultimately funds the Michigan Energy Assistance Program. Again, the information's in there. There's a lot of just repetitive stuff from previous years. We used to opt in, have chosen to opt out when From stopped receiving those funds. From staff's perspective, there's been no significant changes that we feel are necessary to inform the board of in light of the decision that you all are making. We continue to not be significantly negatively impacted by the opt-out from a write-off standpoint. Coming out of the disconnect moratorium, again, this year was a very standard story. There's always a list of people, and the office staff, the administrative staff up front does a great job working with customers to work on those balances. I like to highlight that just because we don't participate in this, it does create the moratorium on disconnects through the winter months, but it doesn't stop our staff from assisting customers. If customers still need assistance, bill pay assistance, we still act as a resource for them to help put them in touch with various options. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but again, this is a very similar, very similar situation to the previous few years when the board has chosen to opt out of participation.
I think it hasn't, we've had some history now. It's been several years that we've opted out. It hasn't, when we first were in that, it was because From was we were actually receiving more money than we were taking in or collecting from our ratepayers. And then again, they changed the rules and From was not receiving anything. And we felt it took us out of the local control. We have our history now, because we've opted out the last several years. We have not seen it negatively impact us with shut-offs, with that type of thing. So I'm for me, I'm in favor of moving forward and opting out.
I agree.
Any other?
I guess if I recall, it was because the reporting requirements for that K-95 would have required Prime to hire somebody to actually deal with all the paperwork, and that made it untenable for them to continue.
I think you're correct. I remember that now. So with that, I would entertain a motion to opt out.
So moved.
And
I'll support.
it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of opting out, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Strategic plan workshop discussion. Again, Charlie and I have been participating in a Zoom workshop, strategic plan workshop there's a total of 4 of us, the other three, Hillsdale, Charlevoix, and Portland. And to let you know that those 3 do not have a strategic plan, so they're working on theirs. We've had our strategic plan, and it's been tweaked over the years. I think for me, it's been affirming the things that we're doing here, and having that contact with others that are going through it. And I would say a couple of them are it's their first time through it, and so they're in awe of, like the vision statement and different things. And one thing I had talked to Charlie, I wanted it on here, because there's like, I think Charlie has it, but there's like 8 steps, there's 8 or 9 steps, and again, the first meeting was more introductory, everybody getting their feet wet a little bit. Second meeting was talking about vision, whether we call it purpose, there's different mission, vision, and values, we have all those. And I just wanted to bring that back to the board, because I wanted us to, we don't need to spend, I feel we don't need to spend a whole lot of time, but if there was something that one of us or whatever wanted to go, I'd like to tweak it, or I'd like to change this verbiage or whatever, I wanted the other board members to be involved in that, and Casey and Ryan and Jim. And I'll let Charlie continue on with.
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to add was, after the first session, there was some discussion of, hey, what are strategic priorities for the utility? Kind of tried to boil things down. Obviously, our power supply and the transition of our power supply came up on everybody's radar. We're going through a major change there. So, and some of the strategic priorities that are kind of outlined are, kind of the foundation work as you go through a strategic planning process. So, big thing was effectively transitioning our power supply. There was a lot of talk, just trying to boil things down into common themes of customer-focused utility. And when I say that, it's about making sure we're adapting to customers' needs. I think everybody sees that the industry is going through a rapid shift, so are we keeping pace with what we need to do as a utility to make sure we're meeting evolving customer expectations? There was some discussion on finding sustainable growth opportunities and balancing that with risk profile to our current customers. So there's a lot of talk of, or one common theme was finding ways that we can leverage growth in order to benefit our customers, but doing that in a balanced way so it doesn't expose our customers to unnecessary risk. The need to adapt quickly and efficiently is also, it's kind of an underlying theme in being customer focused, but some of that is not necessarily customer focused things, it's a bigger holistic view of what do we need to do to adapt quickly. I think a lot of that is navigating, the strategic priority of navigating the massive shift in the industry. And for anybody that was at the MPPA stakeholder meeting, there was a takeaway that Tom Weeks, MPPA employee, said, and I thought it was pretty profound, but it sums up our industry. Never has the pace of change in our industry been so fast, and never will it be this slow again. And I think that's, that kind of sums up our need to be adaptive, and efficiently adaptive, but the industry is going through rapid change right now. And if you're at the MPPA stakeholder, you also heard some people that put their hands up and said, whoa, we're not a part of this change. We don't want to. We can't. And I have a general fear that there are utilities that will go the way of Kodak and Blockbuster. Adapt or die is kind of where the industry is at this point, and it may not be that dramatic, but it's pretty dramatic for an industry that's existed for 125 plus years or so. So we'll see. That was definitely a strategic theme. And then for me personally, and what I see, just long-term financial security. We've seen, as more more volatility has been introduced, ensuring we stay focused on fiscally responsible practices, make sure we always have our pulse on the financial health of the utility and position ourselves to absorb significant volatility in the industry. And then staff development and transfer of knowledge is also important from my perspective. We've got a really good mix of some very experienced people that are going to be, the succession planning process is not a 1 or 2 year process. It's a 5-year process, unfortunately, for a lot of that. And we still won't be able to capture all the value that these senior people bring to the table. Ryan being one of them, I don't know how we could ever replace the experience that he brings to the table. So from a strategic standpoint, trying to understand and make sure we're strategically focused on identifying future gaps in abilities, knowledge, experience, and trying to augment our current staff and make sure we capture as much as possible. And then on the other end of things, we also have a very young staff in other areas, and working towards developing them is a strategic priority. So that was kind of the first, the first step, just getting to know some of the utilities, and then mission, vision, and values. And I would say, Perry and I talk, we will have these conversations at every board meeting just to kind of lay some groundwork, keep the board up to date as to what we're working through. But I also would say one of the underlying themes of the strategic planning workshop is do what is right for your utility. There is no cut and dry, here's the formula for an effective strategic plan. Steve regularly mentions, you know your communities, you know your elected officials, you know your governing body, you know what's right for your community. If the playbook answer doesn't guide your community and it's just an exercise in words, then you don't use the playbook. He talks mission, vision, and values. He said, you know what, if you have a purpose statement and that's what you identify with, don't change the name of the purpose statement. Or one of the things that he talks about here is values, and he gives us a format to kind of share values, and to document values. Well, if that's not what the board sees as the most advantageous way to communicate that, or doesn't see the value in trying to wordsmith more details, then do what his message has been, do what your board and your governing body sees as useful to your utility. There's something to be said about understanding and understanding what he's saying and reviewing things and identifying what we can glean from it. But I guess I bring it up to say we don't have to, the value is in the discussion as much as it is in the final product. But the final product is obviously something that is a guiding document and important, but a lot of this is there to have a conversation, which is what we want to do today. So,
And when Charlie's saying Steve, Steve Vandermeer.
yeah, sorry.
I just didn't want you to think it was Steve
Donner,
Donner. This is the instructor. He originally is from Michigan. He lives in Fort Collins, Colorado, and has worked for
Hometown Connections was the company. When he came and did our governance training, he was with Hometown Connections. He's since retired and is kind of doing a sweetheart deal for MMA because he likes Michigan, I think.
Okay.
And he's a wealth of knowledge.
Are you guys gonna
I enjoyed talking to him at the convention in Nashville.
Are you gonna continue these strategic with the other 3 utilities that you just spoke about?
Yes.
Continue to find out?
It's a series of, I thought it was only 6, but there's 8 steps here, and we seem to cover one step each meeting, so I'm not sure when things get matched up. I thought it was 6 sessions, but
Okay.
yeah, it'll basically run through the summer. every few Thursday afternoons, we have our third session this Thursday. They're about 2 hours apiece, and we all join together. So one of the benefits, I would say, is hearing what other communities are doing, understanding their struggles, and also, I think we bring a lot of value to the table, because we are the one utility participating that has an existing framework, and it can be a challenge. I would also say we have more discussions on a strategic plan focus, obviously, but they don't have a strategic plan, it's hard to have a conversation about it, but.
So he hands out homework for us to do before the next session. Each group has a discussion, or basically around the table, okay, what are you doing, and what's your, I'm gonna probably say, again, not knowing, that probably I'm gonna guess there's no, okay, so would you come up with a mission statement, would you come up with a vision, and that type of thing. So all the others are sharing. Again, I like, I don't apologize for it. I like being basically I feel like we're the leaders of that group because we already have. And again, we had discussion, told, that we had because a couple of them were like struggling. We're like, I don't know what we're gonna do or this or that. And I just said, you can go on to our website, and gave them the website, and you can look at our strategic plan, and you can see what our vision is, and we call it purpose, they basically call it mission, and that type of thing. So it's a good group. I think, again, not all, but I think some of them are looking for, each one of us are getting, it's well worth it, we're getting a value out of that, and not spending $30,000, $40,000 for
The whole group. Who are the other people? Is it a general manager and a member of their board?
So
Participating in these?
I'll say, we've taken it a little bit different approach, Lowell has, because it's just Charlie and I, and again, and then bringing this information back, because it's just, I feel like it's just a different scenario, because I feel like we're just using this for reaffirming, seeing what other people are doing, seeing, picking up on little things as compared to starting from scratch. The others that are starting from scratch, that was one of the first things, there was one or two people, and then his suggestion was stakeholders, figure out who your stakeholders are, whether they're the general manager, a couple council members, the president of the largest company in your community, whatever. So it really, from group to group to group, really varies of who they're bringing into that fold.
I would also say there are some communities, there's varying degrees of involvement from governing bodies. You can tell some communities are more general manager driven, and hey, as a utility, we need more direction, and we need to put it, we need to be involved. Some communities have more involvement from their governing body. I think we probably have more balanced support for marching down, regularly talking strategic planning. You think it's it seems like, and I don't want to speak for the other participants, but it seems like that strategic planning has not been a priority for their communities. So getting that initial support can be challenging, and the PR of it, sometimes some communities are not afraid. Some communities, I think, they think that the end result might might not necessarily be where they thought it was. It's hard to tell. But I think we have balanced support from staff and board. There are some communities that it's just the general manager. There's other communities where it's a city manager and a utility director and a mayor, and so it is a mix. But again, it goes back to what's right for that community, And I don't know the communities where it's just the general manager. That might be the right fit for their community. I don't know what's happening behind the scenes. So, and we'll see who joins next time too. This Thursday, I think there's a desire from some of those communities to bring people in, but. It's a challenge because there's a piece of marketing and strategic planning, because there's wordsmithing, and that can be I think that's a daunting reality of trying to creatively write. I know I would not be the right person to be writing short, concise, sum things up in 2 sentences. That's not, no, I'm not that wordsmith. I'll be the first to admit. So, and I think it's tough to pull together a team with the right background knowledge and the right creative wordsmithing. I tell you point blank, this is this, but it's got to be crafted. It takes a skill. I know my strengths.
So, with that being said, I just wanted to, just very quickly just touch on a couple little things, so currently our vision is Lowell Light and Power will be a premier utility. Pretty simple. Again, if we go back to over the years, at one time we had Lowell Light and Power will be a premier utility of their size. And we just, a couple of years ago said, it really doesn't matter what your size is if you're just a premier utility. And I think, for me, the premier just says it all. Basically, gathers everything, what you need, and for me, I wouldn't change it. But again, I'm just one person. That's why I wanted to bring it back to the rest of the board and see if there's any changes that, that you wordsmith or did whatever and wanted to see anything to change. And then the other is the purpose, and I think Lowell Light and Power is a local municipal utility whose purpose is to provide safe, reliable, cost-effective electricity and energy services in a culture of efficiency, compliance, and sustainability. And, it says to provide safe. There was one of the other groups, and I don't know who it was, talked about safety, not only for the utility, but also safety for the consumer, which, it was, so anyway. And then the others, which they don't really talk about, but our slogan, is the power of Lowell working for you. I personally like everything that we have. I wouldn't change it, but again, I'm just one person, so that's why I wanted to bring that. It's not meant to have a 3-hour discussion, but just
Seems like you guys hammered this pretty good. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, where you really went through what you wanted to see in changes, and at that time I thought you guys nailed it. I'm not sure what has changed in the last year and a half since you guys really went through it.
right.
The one feedback that we got from Steve was in relation to the values. And there's vision, mission, but when you talk your values, he mentions I don't think it's, kind of a value and then more wordsmithing. His recommendation is definitely more, I don't want to say wordsmithing, but more, fewer values, I think, and some more detail behind those. I think if that's what the board wants to do, I think that's a workshop in its own. Again, from my seat, I regularly look at the strategic plan and just reference those values as we make decisions. Are they in alignment with those values? And I get meaning out of it, but this is, there are different ways to carve it up. But if we were going to dive in, you know, and this is why I included some of this. This is a lot of just some examples. It's not guides by any means or how to do it. It's just some examples and showing, you know, the format that he sees as useful. Again, I think it really is a product for the board, and so it comes down to what you all see is the best fit for how we do things.
So I'll open it up for discussion to the rest of the board. If there's-
I kind of agree with Jim's statement that we kind of hammered this quite a bit. I think we cover quite a bit. Anytime we do make any changes, it's these little kind of, hey, can we change this word to this? It's never like, we're like, oh man, we gotta like scrap this whole thing and start again. And then to Charlie's point, I mean, a lot of our core values, a lot of those can be like, you know, can-do attitude and good work ethic. Like those could be combined. We could always look at doing that. I don't see the value in spending a lot of time on it. Like, oh man, Charlie has to read 3 extra lines. I'm not too concerned. I don't think anybody else looks to it and thinks that way. But you know, in time when we do kind of do the adjustments to this, and we've been discussing on taking, you know, a lot of the appendixes off and all that kind of stuff, that might be a time that we want to try to clean some of those up and maybe you know, shorten the list a little bit. But
I think one thing that would be interesting is understanding everybody's top values.
sure, like ranking them instead of alphabetically ordering them, and
Yeah, and I'd just be curious, and for me, it's just more an understanding of the individual personalities of the board. It'd be more a tool for me to understand the board, each individual board perspective. But ultimately, the strategic plan is the voice of the board, the collective board. So there's, you know, that should only be the first step. There's got to be a reconciliation of the different opinions. And I mean, I've sat, you know, we've done this a few times since I've been here, and I think this is a very much a reconciliation of the various perspectives. But again, it's really what you all see as appropriate for a strategic
And his
plan.
recommendation was to get this down to 5 to 7.
Well, and it was.
but more of like grouped.
Exactly.
I mean, you know.
Yeah,
Then
more-
you're saying, then you got.
Yeah, the value, and
See
then
that.
behaviors and actions that
Yes.
exemplify the
Correct.
value, which really, I think you could argue that some of these are, to your point, can be combined and can be, you know, having a can-do attitude is an exemplification.
And they're just so like
Something
close to each other. You could,
Yeah.
you know, there's so many, you could just tag 2 or 3 together
Well, I think the
with a
list
couple
used
extra
to be
words.
smaller, if I recall. And then, like,
Yeah.
one year we kind of realized safety's not even on here, but we know that safety was.
And that was a fantastic addition. I remember when you brought that up.
Yep.
Yeah, but then there's some of these that, I like the idea from the presentation, or from your training here that you had was, going from values to behaviors to actions. Because I think that's one thing where our plan doesn't do as well, and I think you brought that up in the past, that we have that spreadsheet of all these things you guys are doing, you know, and how do you make that connection to the strategic plan? And I think for a while you were kind of putting categories next to things, but then you find out some of these projects had like all 5 categories, and it's
Yeah.
like, well, then what does that really mean?
Yeah.
And so I think it would help to kind of have that breakdown of, here's our 4 or 5 values that drive these behaviors that then drive these actions. And I think that'll just make it much more intuitive once we get to that point. I mean, there's even some on there I think are more behaviors than values.
Yeah.
You know, but I remember at the time, I was like, well, it's gonna take a lot of work to kind of restructure it, so at least we get the ideas out there, that this is what we value. And as long as, like, kind of as you were saying, as long as Charlie can read it and the staff can read it and say, well, okay, maybe this is more of a behavior than a value, but who cares? We know what's there, you know? And it's just, I think, figuring out how we drive that into actions would help, I think, for the staff, long term.
Okay, anything else? Just and it's not something you can think about it and look at it and bring it, you know, at our next meeting or or even reach out to Charlie, or even reach out to me or whatever. It's just, I just wanted to make sure that the board was getting a monthly kind of update of what we were seeing and kind of going from there.
And at the end of it, if there are things that the board wants to prioritize in terms of improvements or enhancements of the strategic plan, we don't have to tackle the strategic plan as a whole. We can pull up individual slides like I did here and frame a conversation around a specific outcome that wants. So it really is, this is a process for the board for sure. So it can be uniquely what you all want it to be.
Go ahead, Gary.
No.
I was gonna say, as the industry continues to change and advance, I believe this also needs to change and advance along with those changes.
And that's why we have an annual review, and I
Exactly.
completely agree.
Okay, let's move on to informational items.
All right. Start with July 3rd. Perry and I discussed this, and July 3rd falls on July 4th falls on a Tuesday this year. Following suit with the city, we've not announced anything, but we've just talked about it and decided that we have the capacity to take that day off and provide it as a paid holiday this year only, kind of as a unique acknowledgement that people would be coming in for a day and going right back home. And most people, there's a large group that are taking off a lot of the large portion of that week. The office will struggle to actually be open to customers all day because of lunches, and it will also,
front desk.
that's not anything you all want to see, trust me.
Just not looking up other people and, come on in, I don't know.
Come on back down. But before Perry and I sat down and said, hey, well, here's just what we're doing, we wanted to give the board an opportunity to comment. But policy wouldn't change. This is a kind of a one-time acknowledgement of the fact that it falls on a Tuesday. I think it's been done in the past based on a different time, I think maybe a Thursday or so. I don't remember exactly what it was, but wanted to provide an opportunity for comment before we announced it to staff at this point.
And for me, I think it's Mills, it gives the opportunity for our staff, employees, some might be planning their vacation around that, and everything, but they can, let's go camping for the weekend. Let's take it's not just a 3-day, it becomes a 4-day, and it's an opportunity to get recharged or get revitalized. Because I just see them coming in for that Monday. We certainly don't have that in our staff that would begrudge having to come in. I think we have a great staff, but again, it's just, like, really, we're coming in here for Monday, Tuesday's the holiday, right? We could have just had, 4 days off and get your batteries recharged, and you're coming back in on Wednesday, and it's a short week, and it's financially, it's not gonna break the bank, and being a small company, I just think it's the right thing to do
And I
for
think
our
it's
employees.
one of the areas that we can leverage being a not-for-profit small utility. Bigger utilities, more challenging. For-profit companies, big challenge. But there's other benefits of, we also can offer profit sharing and bonuses and a lot of the other things that you can get in the for-profit sector. So it's an opportunity to acknowledge a really amazing staff that we have, reward them for the work that they do every day, day in, day out, and acknowledge a healthy work-life balance and enable them to recharge a little bit.
No brainer. Let's.
I will happily announce that tomorrow then. Even though it's in the board packets. I kind of put it in there to see if anyone was like, hey, guess what, nobody did.
But they don't read the packet.
I didn't read 32 pages in, no.
This will only be effective if you read the board packet.
Hey, I wanted my discount from reading your website. Found out that it was no discount. But I did read it.
Pay double.
Alright, then we will move on to performance data. My notes over here, I'm not used to doing double duty.
So there's no vote on that.
No, it's not something that's,
So, going back, when the discussion started, my comment to Charlie was, you're in charge of your employees, and if you see fit or whatever, I felt that this is a decision of the management, as long as it had no effect in negotiations and future things. And this is just a one-time deal, and I believe that
So
it's
an administrative
it's
decision that he can make,
correct,
But-
at least that's how I view it.
Yeah, you're just throwing this to us, so we have.
well, you'd be informed and have an opportunity to say, we need to not make this a trend, or I'm supportive, whatever comments that you feel are appropriate, but,
I think it's fine, I mean, give them Monday and Tuesday off, I think it's fine, even if it was like the other way, you discuss with staff, hey, we even if we couldn't afford it, it would still make more sense to go, you're gonna work on Tuesday, we're gonna do Monday off, that we have a whole weekend. I don't know if we could do that anyways, but
I have no clue.
I don't think we'd be caught in that situation, but cool, it's the right move.
And we will roll on, performance data. Megan and I have met to discuss graphs on this. Hoping things have gotten really hectic, but I know we've got some drafts close. Put a lot of data on here, and I think there's new data that I'd like to introduce, to your point of trends over a longer period of time, and trying to work those in. Honestly, we're trying to figure out what data is really important and what isn't as useful. So we may go through a couple iterations. I'm hoping to see that in the next couple months. I think when we get to the manager's report, you will see that we are very busy with a lot of really good stuff right now. So it's not on the back burner, but we're juggling a lot of priorities right now. But preliminary graphs that I've seen, I think convey, and what we discussed convey a lot of information that's really useful, especially at a board level, very useful to me even. We talked last time, I make the graph in my head when I see the numbers. But there's two very different ways of deciphering data, and I think there's a lot of value in seeing, after seeing the graphs, I'm hoping that they're very useful. I guess I won't tease it anymore. We'll talk about when I have something that we can actually talk about. But talk about actual performance data, a lot of the same stuff. One of the nice things is we've seen our industrial sales start to catch back up and at least get to a flatter trend for the year, which is nice because so much of our volumetric sales are tied up in that the industrial class. Residential sales continue to be down. I think we think that's largely weather driven because it's an on average decline as well. We've seen customer growth year over year, but it's just a weather driven pattern where sales just aren't there. But overall, from a dollar standpoint, we're trending well ahead of last year, and holding well for seeing an overall decline in volumetric sales this year. Wrong screen. Not used to doing both. Cost per kilowatt hour continues to see some upward trend, but In the recent months, we've seen some downward pressure on the overall rates. That's largely driven by PCA outside of residential, and that's just a product of, this is a cost per kilowatt hour. There's just the fixed costs on a residential are just a larger percentage of those bills. So you don't get that same trend as you do elsewhere. With the lower sales, the average cost per kilowatt hour drives up because of that fixed component. Investments in cash, we did see quite a big dip in cash this month of about $200,000. Where is my mouse? I don't need to be double dipping. I can't function in both screens. But we did see some cash erosion this month, but it was to be expected. A lot of it was driven by, we had 3 payroll month last month. Our weekly invoices, a lot of it was power supply driven. We had Campbell and Bell River down for large percentages of the month, so we had to enter into bilateral agreements in the timing on some of those. We're ultimately paying 2 months in the arrears basically for fuel consumed. So we're paying for fuel a couple months ago, but we're paying for bilaterals right now. So we're kind of getting hit twice with power supply costs, but it all averages out over time. It's just a timing thing. But we did have over almost $110,000 in bilateral arrangements this past month to replace power from Campbell and Bell River. We also, MPPA changed their methodology for billing out our annual METC utilization charges. So that's our annual transmission expenses. In the past, they kind of billed us in the rears after they knew firm kind of what the charges were, and they spread it over more months. They've since adjusted that to collect a little bit more quickly, as we've seen transmission costs go increase at about 10% a year. So we're just seeing those costs creep up. So MPPA aligned their billing, how they bill out their members more closely with how they incur the charges for METC. So that's just a slight change, but it ultimately was a $70,000 hit this month that doesn't normally fall in May. We also paid with the large IT project being completed, we paid for all that infrastructure. They didn't invoice us until it was installed, so that was a decent cash hit. And then we also paid our bond principal and interest payment on the revenue bond for the energy center improvements that we did. So nothing to be alarmed about the cash erosion. It's all kind of normal ebbs and flows, and a lot of it was tied in with that power supply. And we've actually already seen the monthly invoice for last month that we get this month, and we're starting to already see declining monthly invoices as a result of Campbell and Bell River being down during their spring planned outages. So that's cash. Aging analysis, not much of note here. Delinquent balances, we're flattening out this trend line, but this section up here drove so much of that trend line up. We're getting into an area we feel very comfortable with where we're sitting from a delinquent balance standpoint at this point. So yeah, everything's trending fairly well. Again, electric requirements and weather, another month of growth in all categories associated with this chart, which is just a fantastic job by the office staff. PCA and PCA revenue, you can see is way down. We've seen that continued downward pressure on that. We'll see more to come, but it's been a while since we've been down below 0.4 of a penny on our PCA, and you can see what that ultimately does. That from our peak of about $90,000 down to 25-ish thousand, that gets spread, that's money in our customers' pockets. So we don't keep any of that money, it's just to keep us whole as power costs fluctuate. And it's really, it's a delayed pass-through almost, a smoothed out pass-through. So it's nice to see our customers able to keep more money in their pockets.
While we're talking about that, where are we, because of the stakeholders meeting and the keynote speaker being from GM, and correct me, I think it was it 2029? They were going to strictly all electric vehicles, or was it sooner? 2030?
I think it was 2035.
I mean, it was,
It's around the corner.
it's a lot closer than what everybody thinks. So, again, in the neighborhood, talking about different things, and they're going like, I'm going, well, you know, that's where time of use, that we're going to, you know, that you're gonna, I've been preaching okay, you're gonna wanna charge your vehicle at night, you're gonna, at the off-peak times, you know, things you could do right now is run your dishwasher at, you know, at 12, you know, before you go to bed, put, you know, all those types of things. So my question is, I know we're going through a pilot program, making sure everything's working correctly, and do we know, I mean, where are we in that stage?
Time of use is fully active. We've started marketing it, tried to market it to EV drivers. Haven't hit the ground super heavy, but we thought we'd get some bite, you know, we want to kind of ease into it. We thought, hey, if we send out a bill stuffer specifically targeting EV drivers, we'll get some phone calls. It's not, I have my opinions, and this is all speculation, but I think one of the problems we're going to have with time of use adoption is our electric rates are cheap. People who are currently driving electric vehicles have disposable income. Unless, even if they're charging, unless that bill gets to the point where it's not palatable, I'm not sure they're gonna put the effort in, I'm not sure there's a value proposition that they're interested in. So there's more to come from that. I'm really curious what happens. And I think the groundwork is there, it's functional. Julie has done an amazing job lighting fires at Daffron. I actually just got an email from her and said, everybody there unfortunately knows her, maybe fortunately knows her as the person that complains and gets things done, but she's regular. Their staff is swarming her to make sure things are going better here. So it is fully billable right now. I am the only customer on it.
So, you had mentioned she was in Texas, is she
Oh, sorry,
on
she's
vacation?
No,
or
she's at the Millsoft conference. I'm sorry.
Okay.
In my mind, you're supposed to know Texas means Millsoft. Sorry. Yes, she's at the Daffron Millsoft conference.
Okay,
We need a chart of time of use customers.
where are they?
One.
It should be a picture of me. It wouldn't be a chart. It would be a picture of me.
Just every month is
No, it's in the manager's report. But if anybody wants to convert to it, you can either send me an email, or I can send an email out to everybody that you can reply to. But we need a record. We want a record of anybody wanting to be on it.
Yeah, I recall when we first voted this in, I think
I think
a couple, I mean.
I said I'd give it a try.
So my
Tina
next,
said she would.
my next question with that, at some point, when we know that everything's working, is this always going to be an optional thing for our ratepayers? Or at some point, all of our ratepayers will be on this?
So that will be just a decision the board has to make. It's definitely a board level decision. At some point, I think I will personally advocate for an opt-out rate as the need necessitates it. Just kind of.
You don't have to go any
That's
further.
counter to, you're laughing because you're right. But as it's as we see a need to better leverage the existing assets that we have, when we try to obviously get ahead of it, but, you know, I think at some point it will be necessary to convert everybody and then.
Because of the demand on our grid.
Yeah, because ultimately, the goal of time of use is to better leverage your existing assets. You know, we build our system to serve the peak.
It's kind of like smart meters, at some point you have to do it.
Yeah, I'll say, and there'll be very detailed discussions on, and we'll bring UFS back in to advise on what's a good strategy, because there's plenty of lessons to be learned from others that have gone to an opt-out rate. But even the utility that everybody's very familiar with that went to an opt-out rate, people aren't particularly happy, but they, you know, it sends the appropriate price signals that better or allow us to better leverage the existing assets. So we want to get ahead of. We want them having an opt-out rate in plenty of time before we see transformers being overloaded regularly due to new electric load from electric vehicles, because that's what's driving the rate change right now. There are other things that can drive rate changes, but yes, I think at some point it needs to go to an opt-out rate.
But, correct me if and I could very well be wrong, but, I mean, wasn't the time of use was actually a benefit to our ratepayers, to reduce their, I mean, so instead of, or am I wrong?
There are winners and losers.
Okay.
We design the rate for the utility as an overall residential class. You look at the residential class as a whole.
Yep.
It's revenue neutral. Individual customers make that revenue neutral. It's an average. So to
Right.
have it to be an
So
average.
some it would save, some
Some of it, and
it
it would cost money, and
So
and you gotta look over a period of time. I'm on the rate, we just went over to summer rates, my bills are gonna go up for the next few months.
So I remember when we talked about it before, the concept is that if you behave like the average customer, your bill won't change year to year, like over a year. If you behave differently from an average customer, there's gonna be some fluctuation. You might save, you might not save, but
Yes.
that's the kind of the idea is that we're expecting the overall average customer to change over time as more and more people get electric vehicles. And we have to have our rates be able to handle that.
How do
So
you
that our infrastructure
educate
can
me?
handle it.
If I sign up for it and you're doing a study on me, how do I get educated, or how do you educate me to say, Jim, you need to change maybe usage during the day to do it at night? How does that help me decide I want to stay on it then?
Well, once you go on, you're committed to a year.
Yes,
It's one of the reasons we are still slowly rolling it out. DAFRON has not delivered on things that, one of the things that I want and is an ability to compare before.
Yes.
right.
And we don't have, DAFRON's supposed to be developing a tool to totalize individual buckets, but there's too much, really, there's just too much data at the interval level to do manual calculations to say, here are all the hours that fall into on-peak, here's all the hours in totalize into on-peak, off-peak, super off-peak buckets. But that's part of the evolution of rolling out the rate, is understanding what the consumer wants. We have a lot of ideas, some of the, you know, we've talked quite a bit about what tools can we develop to help customers. We're talking, some of them are simply, one of the things that we want to do is simply make magnets and place, so you can place them on areas, because it comes down to being aware of when power is cheap and when power is more expensive, and providing you with enough information where you can decide on the value of that electricity at that moment. You know, because the key to being on time of use is not, don't use any power during on-peak. It's you choosing what brings enough value during those hours to decide to use that. You know, if you need to wash your dishes, you just have to do it, and it's 4 o'clock in the middle of the summer. At that point you go, well, it's gonna cost more, but I need to do this, I have to do this. You might also go, that's 4 o'clock, I can wait a few hours, there's nothing pressing. Put a 4-hour delay on it and it'll start at 4 hours. So it's a matter of having that schedule in front of your face. That's the
Okay,
biggest
that's
thing you can do.
So how I get educated.
Yeah, so, and then we need to produce more materials. Biggest thing that, well, Julie and I sat through a time of use conference, virtual conference about a year ago, and the most successful thing people have said is, just put the rate in front of people's faces. Put, you know, and simplify it.
Yep.
Specifically for like a washing machine. Is it after 6? Run me. Is it before, is it between, you know, is it between noon and 6? Don't run. Little things like that, that's the biggest way of educating customers, but on the onset, we're taking a one-on-one approach. Somebody calls, and we've had conversations with customers. There's people call and inquire about it, and I've helped sit down, and we've had pretty extensive brainstorming sessions where, you know, we had to educate from the ground up, you know, our administrative staff on what a time of use rate was, why it's there, how can they assist customers, helping them understand what they have. And they've got a pretty good playbook, I guess, is what you could call it, of talking points in different ways. And that's why we targeted EV customers, because that's the lowest hanging fruit. Program your car, understand your vehicle, and understand how to program it so it charges between midnight and 5 in the morning, or I can't remember what the super off-peak hours are. And then we simply tell them, be cognizant of what you're doing during on-peak. Because it's really, be aware of what you're doing on-peak and move as much as you can to off-peak. You know, if you can, and the biggest thing is electric vehicles. It's getting, and that's why we went and designed the rate to include a super off-peak period that really is designed to reward electric vehicle drivers for being able to charge during those low peak times. And that's what the whole rate is really centered around. So right now, well, short answer is we're working on a one-on-one basis to talk to the customer. We've got some short form, you know, here are the time periods, here are the months you need to be concerned. But we will continue to get more and more creative and introduce new materials as we understand how customers are receiving the time of use rate. Because we've also found that, and this is something that we were very aware of going into it and anticipated, there's a fundamental lack of understanding of how an electric bill works. You know, there's a misunderstanding of what a kilowatt hour is. And it's not an easy concept to convey, but we're able to say, here's what matters. Charge your electric vehicle after midnight. Avoid what you can between, I don't know if it's 11 and 6 or 11 and 5 or noon and 6, but avoid things in the afternoon in the summer, and that's our focus right now.
Okay.
There we go. All right. Ryan, you're up.
Two outages this past month, right towards the tail end of the month. I really thought we were gonna get away with a whole month without having an outage. Sometimes we do that, but right at the very tail end, we had a little bit of tree issues with a line going up Monroe. Fairly lengthy, fairly large amount of customers up there that got knocked out of service for a little while. Some tree branches were trimmed, and we're also doing some work up in that area along with this, I guess it's not with the outage, but we're doing some preventative maintenance work ahead of the road work along Monroe too, and it just happened to be that same exact week that we started that, which was totally coincidental. But the second outage up there on that same street was a result of our guys. This is a connector for a temporary jumper for doing some work, and at one point in its life it was tightened up too tight, and it cracked, and then it finished breaking and caused the transformer to go offline for a few of the customers. That's what the second outage was from. Kind of a bummer, but a little bit of a lesson. The guys understood that everything has a torque spec. You don't want to just tighten everything down as tight as you can get it, because things do break, and a good lesson was learned. So kind of a bummer, but it does happen sometimes.
overall, another reliable month.
And I've seen you guys quite a bit in the area, trimming trees over Washington, the whole wax.
Yep, just some good maintenance going on over there and prepping for the contractors to come in too, but, yep, there'll be a lot of activity over there this year.
All right, we'll roll on to the income statement. Took a good hit this month in net income. A lot of that, again, is very much attributable to purchase power. We were $230-ish, just under $240,000 this month over budget on purchase power, so that flows through. Again, I've explained that with the bilateral purchases. One thing I do want to highlight here, well, I'll talk about it in the manager report, but a large percentage of that. The one line item I do want to bring your attention to is distribution expenses. Down here, we're running a little bit over budget for the year, about just under $19,000 over budget. Wanted to kind of just touch on that because it's the only thing that's significantly over budget from a dollar standpoint, and that is largely attributable to a very large repair we had to make on a truck. It was about a $16,000 repair on the truck that does roll up into those distribution expenses. If you look at individual lines, you'll notice some are over budget, some are under budget. We talk about that regularly, especially in distribution expenses. We don't know exactly where our focus is going to need to be. If you look this year, we're way over budget on tree trimming, and that seems to happen somewhat cyclically. Every few years, it's, hey, we got to put a little more attention into it this year, and that happened to be this year. So there's a lot of movement between accounts, but with the way we account for labor, it's allocated amongst all those. So my big thing when looking into this, and I requested Megan look into it a little bit more, was understanding, did we miss something in terms of a labor allocation? Or what's causing that? And ultimately she landed on it's not necessarily labor, even though there is a labor component. As we peeled funds out of the capital budget, those are dollars, those labor dollars aren't being capitalized. They're more labor dollars are hitting the income statement because they're being expensed because we pulled money out of the capital budget. But overall, the biggest chunk of that was unplanned large maintenance on some aging fleet, and obviously it's extremely important to keep that equipment fully operational, especially when we might see our new truck in another 3 years. The large repair was on the truck that's going to move to the backup when our new truck gets here. So we need that truck to be in tip-top shape, and I can't say enough about what Ryan and his crew do to keep our equipment maintained. That one large repair was unfortunate, but ultimately, gotta have it. Any questions on the income statement? I guess I'll touch a bit. You know, we did hit almost a negative $200,000 net income this month. Again, it's cyclical. I will highlight right here, we are trending, we're back to trending behind budget. Last month we were trending ahead of budget, but we're also trending ahead of where we're at last year. So we're hoping to finish with a strong June and finish the year in a good position. So more to come next month. All right, move on to capital projects. Let's focus here. Seen a little bit of pickup in some of the work on the capital projects. Ryan, they know they've been working on getting capacitor banks deployed. I guess they did that this month though, so you'll report on it next month. But I'll give you the trailer. One of the 2 capacitor banks that was in the budget is currently hanging in the air out at Grand Rapids Gravel Company right now, ready to serve and correct their power factor and correct the power factor on that circuit when they add load there. So Yeah, starting to pick up some. We'll talk a little bit more in the manager's report, but we'll see a little bit more activity next month as Ryan and the crews have been focused on some capital-related projects. And we'll continue to stay focused on some of them throughout the month of June. Moving on to the manager's report. Again, want to thank, we had an amazing attendance at the stakeholder meeting. I had Jim, appreciate you coming, Craig, Perry, very much appreciate you guys were able to make it. I understand that it's tough to get to, definitely understand anybody that can't get to it, but it was great to be represented. The mayor, Mr. DeVore, also joined us, and then we had great representation from our staff, and it was noticed. It was brought to my attention more than once that it was great seeing the Lowell contingency there. So thank you all. It was a great. I thought it was really good. I really like the format where we hear from MPPA CEO Pat Boland, hear from an outsider, and then get more kind of insider baseball from MPPA. So got to hear Steve give his spiel. He did have to cut his presentation short. I talked to him afterwards, and he had more to say. Steve, they did a really good job. Something of interesting note. Can't really share too many details at this point because it's potentially going to be, actually it's going to be contested, but we were presented, Casey and I decided on a transmission investment service committee meeting, and we will be presented with hopefully a couple opportunities to make investments in transmission assets. So we are part owners, MPPA is part owners in multiple transmission lines throughout the state. So there's potentially some opportunity to invest in those, and that ultimately is an alternative revenue stream, helps offset our transmission expenses because there's a rate of return that we're entitled to receive through some of those investments. So it could be a great opportunity for us to improve our financial resiliency through a diversification of investments. NOx compliance was great news this year. MPPA hedged our NOx compliance or NOx allowances for the Bell River Power Plant ahead of the ozone season. We talked about this a lot last year. We got hit. It ended up being, I said I thought it was over 140, and Megan was out of the office when I wrote this. It was right at a little over $130,000 in expenses, so I was off by a few numbers, but the $20,000, roughly $20,000 expense, it may not be our full need because it's a hedged position against anticipated needs. NOx allowances, the NOx allowance requirement will be determined by operational metrics from the Bell River Power Plant and how many allowances they need or how many times they exceed certain limits. But $20,000 hedge position versus about $130,000 expense last year. So good news there. Let's see. Let me use this, sorry. My cursor disappears if I hold still or something. All right. I want to highlight some of the east side feed project that Ryan was talking about. I guess I'll start the the really big transformer that came through town. It's pretty neat. There's some pictures in there. Not really anything to discuss at length here, but it was pretty neat. The east side feed, so Newkirk Electric is potentially starting sometime in late July to start the work on the east side to build the new Hendricks line that's going to go up Jackson and turn in front of Jim's house and run down and tie back into our existing 12470 line over on Lafayette. With that and with the somewhat recovery of our financials over the last few months, I've talked to Ryan and we turned loose some additional capital dollars into this budget to try and get ahead. Since we peeled capital dollars out of this budget, we introduced some back in at the kind of right at the tail end of the year to try and get a jump start on next year and also get ahead of the road project on Monroe. So the big focus was getting as many poles changed out as possible along Monroe. It's not really directly related to the new east side feed itself, but these are satellite projects that will come off of that new feed. So Ryan mentions it in his report, but we will be working, and I think you have outlined 5 satellite projects that we're hoping to work into the capital budget this upcoming year. This is just a jump start on those. As far as East Side Feed project, we have met and are working on communication plan for that project. We all kind of are surprised that Newkirk's going to start this early, that we gave them a very big window. They just have to have the job done by April 1st, 2024. This is pretty good work for wetter times of the year. So we proactively reached out to see, hey, what their thoughts were, thinking that it would probably be tail end of summer, if not into fall before they started, but they're indicating that July timeframe, so we're expediting and making sure we tackle our communication plan. The communication plan will include, for one, next month, Ryan's going to be doing kind of an overview, board training, board workshop, to do a little more detailed review of what that project is, but also outlining some of these satellite projects and what we're going to be doing to advance the bigger picture. We've got a lot of that lined up for this year, a lot of stuff that's going to be ordered during this fiscal year that some of it may not come in until next fiscal year. So the planning period for that is about a year. A lot of that's about a year out, it seems like, just because of really long lead times on stuff like the underground conductor that we need to go under the river. Big piece of the communication plan is establishing some frequently asked questions, and we're working on a more detailed version that will be used to help educate internally and help round out the gaps in the plan to our staff, so that they're mostly the administrative staff that could potentially be getting phone calls. Then we're going to also try and pare that down, something that can be digestible to the average public if people want to send something. The plan will also include, Ryan's actually going to be working with some of the office staff, and they're going to be going out into the field with Ryan when they knock on doors. So the plan is to knock on doors and personally talk to every resident that is along the pole route. And then, that's kind of that first initial concentric circle. Then the next circle is really focused on educating our office staff so that they can answer more direct questions, and then kind of a general plan. We have some contingency plans depending on, what questions we get, what questions we don't, but it's a little different than a large road project. It's a extended interruption or extended disruption of everyday life during the entire project, where when you're rebuilding poles and lines, a truck they set a pole, they move on. There's very little, and there's very little impact to the average customer. There will be some planned outages that are required, obviously, to change out transformers, things like that. They've already started those. They're working on, anytime that's necessary, we coordinate those specifically with the customers impacted. So our communication strategy is really about the most personal, direct communication at the most impacted customers, and then more just having information prepared and ready to answer questions as we go out in concentric circles, and as people get a little further and further from the project, there will be less direct, proactive communication and more readiness to answer questions. And that's all subject to change as we learn from what happens. But with as much as going on over there, and the experience Ryan has in doing these projects and working with customers, it's really mostly about the customers that are directly impacted. And I think the rest of it will be curiosity.
In regarding that today, the DPW was there clearing out that section. They took 2 or 3 dump loads of stumps and rocks out of that corner that we started mowing and taking care of it. I did know this, but Perry probably, this neighbor came to mind today, and there was a house on that corner that burned to the ground. And she remembers her dad, Patty Story, living there. Apparently, they just bulldozed in. So I don't know exactly where that house sat on there, so you might be, when you think about drilling in your pole, there may be a house foundation under there, or an old Michigan basement, so just FYI on that corner at one time, where it's at, I have no clue. And you plan on putting a pole there, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, 10 feet, 8 feet, I just can tell you that there was a home at one time and burned down, and they just,
You never know what you're gonna find when you start digging.
Yeah,
Always
so-
in town.
don't be surprised.
Moving on, generation report, we just want to highlight that Casey did operate this month. Unfortunately, he operated to help pinpoint an issue that they were having where the roof was melting actually, which is frustrating because the use of the roof was exactly what it was when that roof was put down. So it should have been designed to, to accommodate an exhaust stack, but I want to commend him for being proactive, identifying the problem, and this is the first step in a permanent solution. Right now we're working on the solution to fix the root cause of the roof issues. There still are roof repairs to come. Safety update, Ryan and I attended a MECA, which is the Michigan Electric Co-op Association's safety training. City of Portland and Homeworks Tri-County do a joint safety meeting. Ryan and I attended a meeting last week to sit in on it, and I followed up today with MECA. For the time being at least, we've identified them as our training partner for our safety training needs. Really encouraged to continue to interact with the group over in Portland. There should be some learning opportunities talking with the co-op over there as well. The relationship will be a combination of joint safety meetings with Tri-County, the co-op, Portland and us, and then there will be also safety meetings throughout the year that are just Portland and us. But one of the things as we've revised the overall safety program is making sure we incorporate opportunities to learn from others and network when it comes to safety. And so safety discussions are as valuable as anything you get out of a safety program. The opportunity to learn from other people's situations. And MECA brings a pretty diverse background of knowledge in a good network that they can pull from. So it's a better safety option than the other option that we were looking at, I think. And we're confident that they can meet the needs and potentially help us continue to improve our overall safety program, not just the safety training side of it. Line check. So the line check, the plan for the line check originally, I thought was intended to go to the Planning Commission in June. Didn't quite have enough time to get everything in line to get it in the June Planning Commission, so it's been pushed out to the July Planning Commission. Everybody I've talked to says this is not indicative of the deal falling apart. Actually, our attorney has been very happy with the process. The developer's been very happy with the process. I'm not sure if, Jim, you have anything else that you've heard, but there's nothing to be alarmed about the delay. It's just a natural delay to give everybody enough time to get final reviews, because the Planning Commission leverages Williams & Works for a site plan review, and they do a pretty extensive review. I'm not sure if that's exactly the component that they needed more time on, but I know that Williams & Works does a fairly extensive review of everything, and they pull together a comprehensive evaluation of all the proposals. So still anticipate that happening in July.
I did attend last night's planning commission. I don't know if it was going to be on their agenda for July. You may want to double check, please. I'm not sure. And they did find homes for the stuff that is currently stored in the line shack, the P, whatever you call that.
Yeah.
And some other things, so they finally found a home to put it in,
Oh, cool.
so they can get it out of there.
I'll say, I
Your
talked to,
garage?
No, I'm not giving up my third stall.
I think there's some real estate down there in an empty barn.
That's what I've been told, so we'll see.
I talked to Lou, D'Agostino,
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
that.
he was the one who mentioned it today.
So, great. Transformer fire, I'm gonna be careful what I say here because it's ongoing, but another party has reintroduced themselves to the discussion, and now the manufacturer would like to not have one-on-one conversations with our attorneys and their attorneys and have the duplicative conversation with this other party and their attorneys, so we'll see what happens. To Perry's comment that we've talked a lot, about making sure we're not throwing good money after bad money type of thing. We're not spending much money at this point doing this. It's mostly, our attorney just poking them saying, come on, give us an answer, give us an answer. So we're kind of in a holding pattern now. We were really close to making actually, our attorney had made some great progress towards a resolution, and this third party reintroduced themselves. So we'll see what
Can you
happens.
say, is it a homeowner that lives next to it, or you can't say who
I
it is?
would prefer not to share their
Okay.
business, but I'm happy to talk offline. I just don't.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. Only other thing I think that I have in here is I talk about the IIJA webinar, the 40101D program, which is the grid resiliency program that's administered through the state, through Eagle. They had a webinar. We were all optimistic that specifically webinar for municipal utilities, and they're going to give us some good information. A whole lot of who knows still. Their plan still hasn't even been approved by the DOE. They're encouraging joint applications. They're also encouraging, they're trying to form this around prescriptive projects, pole replacements, things like that. So I'm still optimistic that there might be an opportunity for us to get a grant, especially as they go prescriptive, but you can tell Eagle is very concerned with the workload and administrative burden of trying to evaluate the quantity of proposals that will come from the municipal world when 50% of the funds in 40101D are allocated to small energy providers, which is like 4 terawatts or more, 4 terawatt hours, 40 terawatt. The classification is everybody but consumers is DTE. DTE and consumers get half the money, everybody else gets half the money. So there's a lot of the quantity of entities in that second half is causing them quite a bit of heartburn, if I had to guess. So they're trying to encourage joint applications, aggregation of applications.
I was gonna say, is that where one of the state organizations could step in and say, hey, we'll write, and then distribute it to our members?
It's not quite that easy.
Yeah.
Because every utility still has to be, the contract is ultimately between the individual utility and the federal government. So,
The utility or the municipality?
the municipality, sorry, that's probably better. It's the end entity, not I say utilities, I'm thinking consumer, CTE, co-ops. But yes, in our case, it would be with, I don't have a definitive answer. But yes, the end recipient, whether we classify as an individual entity as Lowell Light Power or we're under the city's umbrella, but the contract isn't necessarily with an aggregating entity like NMEA or something. So there's still more to come, but I will commend the state. They're trying to be as proactive as possible because once they issue a request for proposals, they can't talk to us anymore. The communication has to stop. So more to come. I was hoping for more definitive answers. We didn't have any. I also want to highlight two other real quick things. RP3 application, we have started that. We've actually met for probably a total of 5 or 6 hours as a leadership team already on the RP3 application. We've gone through the full application and have a laundry list of to-do items. One thing I'll bring up is the application gets more and more rigorous every cycle. And it's rigorous in the details that they're looking for. Where it used to be, hey, are you doing this? Yes, it's, all right, now it's, yes, you're doing it, and give us 15 different examples and highlight in your document. So it's just it's a pretty big undertaking, which is why we also started almost as soon as the application became available. It's not due until into September. Casey, Ryan, either of you know, right off the top of your head?
Sounds right.
I don't say, I'll be honest, we focus so much on the actual content of the application. Yeah, I think it's September 30th. Yeah, it is, September 30th. We've set an internal goal of being completely wrapped up by September 1. That way we have plenty of room to wrap things up. We've focused on starting longer, anything that we've identified that's a longer lead time, involves outside contractors, anything like that, or things in motion. The goal is to get those started very early on. Because there's always, anytime anybody goes through this, they should take things away that are actionable to start doing. And we definitely have some of those already. Things that we just need to sharpen up as well. But I guess I bring it up to say we're tackling the problem way ahead of a deadline, and it should be a very healthy process that hopefully doesn't become overly burdensome to anybody, but it's a pretty rigorous application, so.
One question about that, and is Tom still working for us part-time?
Yes.
Is he a part of that RP3, or are you, I guess my suggestion would be to pick his brain, because I know the application changes from year to year to year, and it's been a few years since he's been on that, but I would just say that he would have key things that he would know what the RP3 group focuses in on.
Yeah, so RP3, the group puts out an application guideline that tells you what they want, but ahead of that, so no, Tom's not participating in our reviews. I think that's, he brings an absolutely invaluable perspective, but I think it's gotta be a leadership team driven application. We are, as questions come up, we're referencing and asking them, and ahead of the whole process. So the way that we're organizing it is Lisa is acting kind of as the administrator of the application, making sure there's a single voice throughout the whole thing, make sure there's consistency, taking on uploading of the documents, all that. So she has taken on, while the leadership team, me, Casey, Ryan, Casey and Megan, we're doing more of the actionable items. Lisa is, kind of her role in the process is supportive across the board and understanding what makes a strong application. She's also sitting in on webinars that are, strengthening each of the 4 sections. She's also she sat down with Tom, reviewed the full application with Tom, picked his brain. So yeah, we're leveraging Tom as an asset, but we're also leveraging Lisa and kind of pick and pull.
And Tom's on his way out. I'm just, all I'm just saying is that it sounds like you've done that. I think he would be an asset to the
Absolutely. And we, in a lot of what we're doing is based, and how we're tackling it is based on his feedback, even in areas where we get, one of the things is they put out a list of things where questions they expect supporting documents to be attached. I'm leaning more towards what Tom wanted to see in our own history, because we've already identified some things where I'm like, I don't necessarily buy that. We did that differently in the past. So the other thing is we look at, and as you go through the application, you have the opportunity to look at previous answers and what you did in the past. And a lot of what we did in the past was also shaped by Tom, so there's a piece of it that's indirectly, and we're leaning more towards what's proven to be successful in the past. By leveraging what's been successful in the past, we're leveraging Tom's info by proxy, but also we're just picking his brain too.
And I know that the RP3 application change, as they get different members on there, that the application changes.
Yes.
It is not a stagnant application.
And they're very much evolving with the industry. Obviously, cyber-related items have taken a much bigger focus. So,
Back to Kay,
okay.
what is a rend stump grinder?
I don't know, what happened? Megan was supposed to catch that.
Okay.
I blame her. That's it.
Already got it.
I already got it. Daniel catches every typo in this.
That's all a while back.
On L, I see the customer survey comes out the end of this month.
Yes,
And how long is that going to stay open?
about 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Yeah, we're gonna hit it the month of July and the month of
That'll be
August.
in the mail out bill, or is it online?
It will, so it'll be, we're trying to do is provide as many avenues as possible. So in the bill this month will be a full page, and it'll have a QR code. It'll outline all the details. You can scan the QR code and take it electronically. We've also worked with Blue Water Research to get paper copies. So the way that you can fill it out as many times as you want on your phone, but they take the data and they scrub it at the end and eliminate any duplicate IP addresses, or device IDs. I can't remember the field, what they target, but they try to make it so that one person can't sit and fill it out 40 times. But we also are going to be converting paper copies that we get from people into digital forms. So we had them set up a separate landing page for Faith, our recently graduated high school student, where she's gonna take paper copies and manually input them. So if you wanna do a paper copy, we can get you a paper copy, but we're encouraging people to do it electronically. And
I thought you were gonna do something down by the showboat, pass them out, or no? For those, for the concert? Were you thinking about doing something down there?
I don't
Pass it out?
think so, but
Okay.
I'll be honest, I'm not sure.
That's all right.
I'm one step removed from the planning process. We had an initial meeting, and then the office staff has ran with it from there to focus on where all to get it out at.
I think you were saying that like only a quarter of our customers are there at those kind of events.
Those events are a challenge.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
So
that-
people
I
think
don't
they're
know.
lighting power and then they don't realize they're not.
And then you're getting,
That's good.
But,
information from people.
I'll let that do one.
well, and honestly, we're giving ourselves, this is our first dip into it. We're gonna decide what works and what doesn't work. And we also gave ourselves 8 weeks, and I can't remember somebody has an action item that on every Friday, they're gonna send out a report showing us progress. So we've got kind of some touch points throughout that 8-week period to say, hey, if this isn't working, let's pivot and do something different in before the survey closes out. So this is a little bit of a learning
Yeah.
experience.
Okay.
We'll see. Last thing I want to highlight is IT problems. We continue to discover more and more problems. The latest problem that was discovered is foundational in nature and is wildly discouraging. We have all of these virtual servers on one server, or on a combination of servers. And industry best practice is the sum total of your virtual machines should equal the storage that you allocate to this, should be about 90% of what the full server capability is. That way you always, every server maxes out, you still have a 10% cushion. The way ours were set up is it's provisioned to about 250%. Not even close. And now we're having servers that are it thinks they have more capacity storage to do more, and then they run into things that they can't do, so it starts shutting down other servers to free up capacity. It's been an ongoing problem. We have a solution in place, but it's not as costly as I thought it was gonna be, honestly. The actual preferred solution by our vendor is not the most expensive option, because unfortunately, the servers are pushing towards end of life. The servers will be 5 years old next year, and that's about the lifespan of a server. So we don't wanna a Band-Aid solution is actually the best solution here, whereas if not, you're gonna strand so much cost in a permanent solution, and you're gonna have age issues where different components are different ages, and it just gets you into a bad cycle. So we're gonna expand storage and migrate some servers, and then at the end of the day, we have to still correct the over-provisioning. So adding storage isn't an answer, because you're not gonna over double your storage, but we can add a little bit of storage and then fix the problem incrementally. Less than ideal. The big problem is it delays further things that we want to do. We've addressed the vast majority of our IT needs at this point, but there's still, you're never done with IT. It's always what's the next thing, and we keep running into it. We keep coming up with these things that are just curveballs from left field that, quite honestly, our current vendor didn't know to look for, because they're so wildly outside of the norm. There's no industry standard that was being followed. Discouraging.
Okay. Are you looking at long-term, maybe cloud storage, or no, not at this point?
Long-term, we've not identified our next solution. Everything's on the table, and that's a process that we've actually got
Yeah.
earmarked to start later this year, evaluating our
I'm
options.
sorry I'm at this meeting and not hearing it from my boss, or the guy that works for me, that I have to hear it here and not there. So I'm disappointed.
It's a,
Discussion we can have later.
and the issue that we have is it's not the world is falling issue. It's not $100,000 fix, or even a 50 or 30 or 40, $50,000 fix. For me, the biggest thing is there's more I want to be doing. There's more we should be doing. There's enhancements that we can optimize our investment right now, and we can't get to some of those. One of the things that's on our radar is I want every workstation to be fully mobile. I want people to be able to answer phone calls, do whatever. We have childcare issues, and want somebody to be able to have a curveball and maybe not work permanently from home, but fill in, help out, and just be more flexible. But those are all things that we need our IT partner to lead to do the back end work on, and they just can't get to it from a priority standpoint when you have servers shutting down.
Well, there was some poor documentation too, because our company installed a wireless network between the new bathroom, and City Hall, because there's no connection. Well, in not knowing what is what, it got unplugged. Cable is gone. So now we're coming in, and I want to make sure that it's not finger pointing that our consultant is there working with us, so in the future, they know what this is. Know what the IP address is.
There was a lot of
Yes.
lack of documentation.
Patience, yes.
And there's been stuff discovered monthly for the last 6 months, it seems like, so.
Yeah.
I think that is manager's work. I want to thank everybody for getting cybersecurity training done. I've got a report today that everything is completely done. And then just some cool pictures. This was the big point where I was like, I wonder how this is going to work. They were able to snake this big transformer around. I thought it was neat. There's a guy here that's steering, right, Ryan? That was his job. But there was a person riding right there that was in radio communication with the guy steering, because the guy steering can't see anything.
Well, and the other, which I thought was, you can have all the sophistication that you want, but the guy, not the guy in the seat, but the guy that was up there had a 4-foot level on the trailer, and he was watching the level to make sure that trailer did not tip. And that was, when I was watching it, that was the majority of his job, to stand there and just to watch that level. And, you know, that's, in a way, that's pretty simplistic.
Well, they must have had a hydraulic thing to keep that thing level.
So all the wheels were basically independent, and
Yeah.
they could do it, they could lower it, they could, I mean, I was with Ryan, it was phenomenal. So this, where this, the other railroad track that they had to go, the signal lights were much further apart.
The 3 or 4.
So they could
tracks.
easily get in and go around it. This is much closer, so they actually had to go to the side, come, turn the wheels, get it to go this way. They actually had to unhook it. They had the back truck, they had to unhook at one time.
You know, it's like
and
this truck was about to get unhooked right when I took this picture.
and move it, and it was just, but I'm sure they planned for that, but they did it.
And
It was
assuming they had to keep that transformer level because of the oil that's inside.
The weight.
Weight,
Oh,
it's
so it
easy
doesn't
to-
tip.
There's no
There's
oil in
no
that?
oil in them transformers that size until it gets on site and it's all put together. The cooling pins are not there, the bushings aren't there, there is zero oil in that thing.
Okay,
And I'm sure they tried to minimize
so
the weight.
it's purely a weight and
Level
physical.
because it's
Yeah.
19.9 high and
Yeah.
you want it to stay straight up and down, it's
Okay.
gonna tip over.
Once it starts tipping, it doesn't stop. The tipping point is,
And it just to throw stones, low light and power was there, the guys in the caution vehicle, everybody was there, and when it was supposed to start, and everybody was waiting for Consumers Power to show up,
somebody was waiting on blue and white trucks.
and had to wait. I mean, it started, what was supposed to start at 8 o'clock started at about 10 o'clock.
And I'd say everything that, all of our expenses were billable to the moving company. We didn't have any significant expense, but, we did have expenses, so.
Charlie even had a field trip that day,
Like,
which
yeah,
I thought it was great. All the office staff closed the doors and took them down and watched it.
Yeah, not every day that there's, 600,000 pound piece of equipment come through town. They were all curious. I said, let's go watch.
Well, you tell me, you think that transformer cost how many millions?
I don't know. I mean, it's 10 million, 20 million, I have no
At least
clue.
10 million, yeah.
That's on a scale that it's astronomical. And what's great, so funny story, I think later that day, I went to an ITC planning meeting, in Holland, where they did a regional plan. I said, hey, you guys just had a transformer come through town, what is that? I thought it might be for a solar project, because there's solar going in up on 5 Mile. I thought, hey, maybe it's related to one of these solar projects. It's normal maintenance on that substation. They deferred that substation rebuild a year. That transformer's gonna sit at that substation for a year on the ground, because by the time they deferred that capital project to rebuild or do whatever they were gonna do, that was already on the boat. So it just kept on coming. So it's literally parked, it's gonna be sitting out there at the substation for about a year. But it's just normal maintenance, normal replacement. I was kinda hoping it was because of something, but it's also good to know that, and that's the substation that we're connected to, correct? That's the,
Around 2 mile.
It's a part of
that's the Virgin's substation?
our line goes in and out of there, or the tap that feeds our line goes in and out of there.
Because we're fed out of Virgin's Mercat line.
Yep.
So, pretty neat, and
So
then,
that really 600,000 tons?
That thing, the whole entire package
Yeah.
is 600,000.
Trucks
The
and-
transformer itself was just over 300,000.
Oh.
So came on a special train and
walked it over.
and they brought it back behind, New Union, and it sat there, and then they set up apparatus on both sides of it and lifted it up, pulled the train out, and then put this trailer underneath it, set it back down. They did that the day before, and then, it was,
it was neat to watch.
the the two, where you see on both sides, those red, those are actually like knobs, and they put slings around that, and actually lifted it up with hydraulics, and then,
Yeah. And then the last picture I highlight is, story time at the library.
so, did you record this at all?
I
mean,
wasn't-
like, get a sound of Mark Drew reading to,
I was not able to attend,
Oh.
but my wife and children did, and they absolutely loved it, and I'm just happy that my kids didn't come wreck the thing. I know you!
Mark said it was silent when he started reading. The kids just zoned right in on him and were completely quiet and just listened really well.
It was a
because he's a
lot.
scary dude. You know?
I saw that mustache and went, what the heck is going on?
But they read this book, and I'm not sure if every board member has this, but if you don't have this,
Yep.
this is a really cool book. Actually put together by WPPI, which is the Joint Action Agency out of Wisconsin, but MMEA, we ordered a bunch, MMEA ordered a bunch, branded it in the back, but
Yeah.
definitely
My kids have one in Chicago, my grandkids have one in Chicago.
perfect, awesome.
Yeah.
I'll say, I know somebody, I know one little girl that definitely, if she doesn't have one, she's gotta have one.
Can you sign it, Charlie, for them?
Well, so
It should be signed by a real person.
it is funny, so that's one of the things that, some communities have done, I think it'd be fun to do, it's like give the books out, autograph them, but
Yeah.
really, really awesome outreach tool, we've used it all over the place. We're talking about putting them in the little free library, the little community library, I mean, they're,
There's one on Washington Street.
yeah, but apparently there's maps of them where you register them and they're registered. I just thought they were something that somebody wanted to do, but, yeah, we're looking at different places to get these. I'd like to put some, in the trucks, kids come out, they're fascinated when they get to see, the guys do some work. I think it'd be great to be, for some of the linemen to be able to go hand out a book to kids
That's a
on
great idea.
Yeah,
little things like that.
the expo.
Yeah, Expo, I mean, it's a really good book. My kids love it. I've got 2 different copies, I think, 'cause I got one from MMEA and I got a Light and Power one, but, it's a fun book. It's just fun. I enjoy it.
I noticed that the employees are smiling more than the kids are.
This is a really good picture.
Yes.
Because Jeremy and Mark both have big old smiles on their face. Fun, definitely fun. So, I think it's important for us to do stuff like that. Yeah. But that is manager's report. Any other things?
Okay,
Scheduled meetings?
schedule meetings, as, when you're kind of
Somewhere.
somewhere.
I'm not good at doing both. They're
Next meeting is,
my birthday.
the 11th. Okay, so we should have a cake.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, board comment. We're just gonna go, because we're gonna go into closed, and I just do it first, and then the people that are leaving get to hear it. So, Daniel,
I guess I got one question. Do you know when they're gonna reassign seats? So there's, me and you are.
they've already done that. They
Yeah.
said we got them to do it at
Yes.
not the last board meeting,
I was
but
showing up.
The last one in May.
the last one in May, they did it.
Okay.
So I
So,
brought it to
I'm
their
sorry,
attention.
you and I are
Great.
both reassigned.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yep.
reappointed and you're good to go.
And
Yep,
then,
you're good for another, whatever.
and then our July meeting, we'll do a reorganization.
Yep.
Reorganize the board, and then I'll also bring, our board commitment, ethics, things we
Right.
talked about every new term, refresh that. So I'll bring those next month as well.
Yeah, I guess I have one question for you, Charlie, that's related about like how many days in cash we're sitting on now, like what it's been looking like since the PCA's caught us up quite a bit, just out of curiosity.
I don't have those connected, but we're
Yeah.
we are north of our policy.
Good.
I think that is great, though. I will see. Yes.
And then, yeah, I just wanted to say, special thanks for doing the story time thing. we didn't make it, but Lauren saw it and was like telling me about it, and I was like, I had not told her that it existed, so.
That is awesome.
Was getting around, yeah. So,
Good.
that's all I have.
Andrew,
I'm good for today, don't have anything.
you're still out of breath from running over there, that's right.
Let me tell you, he stopped breathing hard about 15 minutes before I would have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jim,
I'm good, thank you.
The only thing I can think of is that I attended the breakfast at the DPW that Marty Chambers put on. And I just, as a board member, extended my gratitude for them working so well with our Lowell Light Power team.
Just a couple of brief things. So I had, at the last council meeting, so as pretty much most people know, I'm a printed type of person as compared to online. The city put out, I thought, was an excellent newsletter that was in the water bill. Very informative of what's going on Monroe and dates and everything. And I bring that up just because I think that's also an avenue for us for the projects that are going on to do that. And again, whether we counterintuitive to mail them out to people that are on paperless billing, but I'm wondering if there's a way that notifies the paperless billing people that there's a newsletter on on the website that you might want to look at or something, if whether you get a text, or whether you somehow digitally get notified. There's a great informational thing about Lowell Light and Power that you can read online or whatever. Again, I don't know, not sure.
There's a link in the email now, but I think to me it's, I don't want to say it's not buried, but I think we will see very few people click on the link.
Right, but again, that's just to get that word out. And earlier today, I was met with Charlie. I attended a school board meeting last night, and could be done later. So this is for Ryan, that if you're working with the school, Steve Turnbull, the operations guy, is retiring. I don't know if you knew that. He is retiring, and they have hired a new person, and I think you'll work great with him when you do. It's our former superintendent. Greg Pratt is coming back. I don't know if he's found that he doesn't have enough to do in retirement, he's bored or whatever. But they're looking at it as a great hire, somebody that can hit the road running, because he knows all the buildings, he knows the operations, how everything works, but he's been hired as the operations manager for the school. So, and with that, there's a couple other openings that they've had some retirements. Tim Berg is retired, which is head of the grounds, and I know the school is looking for somebody in there. Head of maintenance, Steve Nelson, is retired. So again, if anybody knows anybody, have them apply. And with that, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session, and you can read what it's for, and when we do, we will have to do a roll call to go into closed session.
So it's MCL 15.268C, and it is in reference to negotiations associated with a collective bargaining agreement.
A motion that we go to closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268C in reference to negotiations with the labor and bargaining unit.
And do I support?
I'll support.
Any further discussion? If not, Charlie, do a roll call?
Yep, Chairman Beecham,
Yes.
Vice Chair Shraven,
Yes.
Board Member Crawford,
Yes.
Board Member Fauger.
Yes.
Okay, we're in closed session. Adios, muchacho.
Thank you.
Okay, we're out of closed session, we're back into open session. After our discussion about the tentative agreement, I would entertain a motion to approve the tentative agreement IDEW dated June 12th, 2023.
And to clarify, this will be the formal ratification of the agreement. This is the legally, this is the board's formal adoption and ratification of this contract. So this will be carried forward to our attorneys will incorporate it into the formal contract, which we talked about this morning. I'll ask you to come into the office to sign, but the board is welcome to see it, but the board won't take action on the contract as finally pulled together.
Sure.
Just want to make sure to clarify that piece of it.
I'll move to ratify and adopt this tentative agreement as of June 12th, 2023.
Okay.
I'll support it.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would like to do a roll call on this, just to,
All right, Chairman Beecham,
yes.
Vice Chairman Shraven,
Yes.
Board Member Fauger,
Yes.
Board Member Crawford.
Yes.
And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
3 hours after your first motion to adjourn.
What's that?
To the minute.
Is that with support?
Yes.
Okay, then moved and supported. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Do you need these back, Charlie, or we good?
I can take it. I'll take them all back and shred them if you want.
Well, they're gonna be.
Yeah, these are just. Oh, sorry about that, Barry, I forgot. I'm not real good about filling in their duties. I shouldn't be scrolling and turns out they go pitch out. Thank you all for ratifying the contract. I should turn this off, another thing I forgot to do.
Well, it's good.